As we turn in our Bibles and in our lessons to chapter number 13 in the book of the Revelation, this is lesson number 29. Now, the last time I did the study of the Revelation in 2018, I did it in 21 lessons, but we have added so much more to this whole study of the Revelation. So we're just now in lesson 29 in chapter number 13, and we'll start off with verse number 1 in chapter 13. So as chapter 13 begins, we are still on a journey through the seventh trumpet, also referred to by the flying eagle of the sixth trumpet as the third woe, the worst of the woes. And the seventh trumpet unveils a list of the major participants who are contributing to the time of Jacob's trouble, which we also know in the Revelation is called the tribulation of Israel. And this time of tribulation occurs in the 7 years just before the second coming of the Lord to Armageddon. This section can be understood best as a history within the prophecy, which I've been telling you about. This history is within its words. We can find the things that happened in the past, all the way up to the present, and even into our future, about these characters, these participants in the tribulation of Israel. So it's interesting because in introducing these participants who will be presented here in the Revelation for the very first time, we have not seen them, we don't know about them by these names. It was necessary for the Lord to tell a short history about each of these participants. It is the history found in the previous 65 books of the Bible. You know, I've told you many times, there's nothing new in the New Testament. And that's the same for the book of Revelation. We can find the seeds and the growing of everything in the New Testament back in the Old Testament and even in the Gospels and the letters that come before the Revelation. This history is to accurately identify the influence of these characters on the story of the world through the ages, all the way up into how they are going to be part of the tribulation of the nation of Israel. The Lord tells just a little bit about their history. And it's interesting because in what He's telling and what we're going through right now, He's just telling enough of the history to get the participants of where they need to be when the storyline picks back up after the history has been presented, to where everything begins to operate. So you'll know who these people are when we get to them. He sums up the rest of all their activities with His second coming, whenever all that happens. With each participant, it is just a short summary is what I'm trying to tell you. It's not the whole story, but the whole story is coming, so you have to hang on. So we must be careful not to take the introduction of these participants as their whole story, because they're all going to merge on Israel in those 7 years. So in the last chapter that we went through, our last few chapters, I should say, we looked at the ark, which holds and represents the covenant of God. The seventh trumpet, this is where it starts out. We look at the ark. It started with the ark, which represents the covenant of God, and that was directed to His creation and to the nation of Israel and to the birth of Messiah and to the great red dragon, which is all in the Old Testament, by the way, and to the red dragon's antics to persecute the nation of Israel, which all happened in the Old Testament and in the Gospels. This lesson will look at 2 more major participants today. We're going to do our best to get through 2, and if we don't, we'll hang on to the next if our time is up. So we're going to look at 2 more participants. But there's even more. In fact, the Revelation in the seventh trumpet doesn't tell us all the participants. When we get down to the bowls of wrath, the 7 bowls of wrath, we're going to even meet more participants that are there to bring tribulation to the nation of Israel. And for now, we will be introduced to these 2 things that we call the 2 beasts. One comes from the sea and one comes from the land. And so we begin with the appearance on earth, as John sees the appearance on earth of the beast of the sea and its horns and its head. And John says in chapter 13, verse number 1, he says this, "And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. And then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were the blasphemous names." Now don't look at the red one. That's the devil. That's Satan. That's the dragon. This is the beast that comes up that sees the waters dripping off of him. You'll see that he has these 7 heads, and on his heads there are 10 horns. And on his 10 horns he has 10 diadems on his head. And he's got blasphemous names written across him. Who is this? Who are we talking about? Well, the red one is Satan the dragon, the red dragon, the devil. We know who he is. And he's going to need help. So he's going to need a nation that comes along that controls a mass of people to gather an army to participate in his ultimate attempt to annihilate and destroy the nation of Israel and fight against the Lord at the great battle in the valley of Megiddo, which we know as the valley of Armageddon. And the Revelation has not revealed that yet to us, but it's coming. Just hang on, it's coming. John sees the dragon standing there on the seashore in expectation of the arrival of this first beast. And the Lord presents him as an animal with 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 diadems. And he tells us his physical characteristics there. He's coming out of the sea. He did not come off the ocean. Had John wanted to use the word ocean, he could have. He's coming out of the sea. He came out of the sea. We have already made the case for this already in the previous lessons. I'll just summarize it really quickly. When John says the sea, he knows the sea. It's called the Great Sea in his day. Later on, it's going to be known as the Mediterranean Sea. And this sea is important. But how and what does this beast look like? I've already told you that. Sure, he has 10 horns. And as we've mentioned in past descriptions of the red dragon, these horns of this beast are symbols of countries established in the history of the world and recorded in the Bible. Each horn is a country. And as a reminder of what we discovered in the last lesson, with the takeover of the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire of Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue and the 10 toes, these 10 toes are the 10 countries formed when each leg of the Roman Empire fell. Now you remember the Germanic Goths defeated the Western Empire in 476 AD and subsequently decided in their infinite wisdom to divide that whole landmass into the countries of Britain, France, Spain, Italy, and North Africa. When the Ottoman Turks destroyed and defeated the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, in 1453 AD, and subsequently decided in their infinite wisdom to divide that landmass into Greece, Macedonia, Turkey, Syria, and Egypt. These together are the 10 toes, or the 10 countries that surround the Great Sea, known as the Mediterranean Sea, save for the one country of Britain that's off to the side north there of France. Well, in this verse, this great dragon stands. Satan, he stands on the seashore waiting for this beast to appear. He is waiting for these 10 nations to form an empire. And although Satan has done great damage in the history of humanity with the world, the simplest being his ability to deceive Eve in the Garden of Eden. His great work has been done through the control of great empires that have existed through the history of the world and really brought turmoil to the nation of Israel. And of course those empires, which are represented by his head on the red dragon, is Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome, and soon to be the revived Roman Empire, which is the beast, the empire of the beast coming out of the sea, and you see him standing there by that red dragon. And so with the formation of a final empire, coming out of that sea, around the Mediterranean Sea, a revived Roman Empire, for lack of a better name, that's what I call it, will be the last empire that Satan will control and wreak havoc on the earth, to rule over the nation of Israel. Egypt ruled over the nation of Israel. All those empires that I mentioned to you just a minute ago ruled over the nation of Israel. The 10 horns represent the 10 countries that will join in the last days, and the 7 heads represent the 7 empires that have controlled and tormented the nation of Israel all this time. And by the time of the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire in 1453 AD, which had controlled the Promised Land for many centuries, the victorious Muslims took over the land of Israel in earnest until under Islamic control, if you will remember. It will remain under the control of Islam until World War I, when Great Britain would be assigned after Islam and Germany lost. Britain would be assigned to manage the country of Israel. Great Britain would control the land, absolutely control the land. Israel lost that land in 606 BC because of her sin to Nebuchadnezzar, and it was returned to Israel in 1948 AD. The Promised Land did not belong to Israel for 2,554 years, even though the Jews lived on the land all along. They were visitors on their own land, owned by other countries, other empires, for 2,500 years. It is imperative that we return to the Old Testament to identify these 10 nations that we're talking about of this new revived Roman Empire found in Daniel chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of the Babylonian Empire. As the Assyrians had conquered the Egyptians, and Nebuchadnezzar had conquered the Assyrians, the king had been having Nebuchadnezzar had been having this recurring dream about a statue with different body parts made from different material. Frustrated, he called for an interpretation, and Daniel was able to respond. Daniel's response is found in my commentary in the book of Daniel for each part. If you want to go look at that, I don't have time or whatever to put it in here. But I will go on to tell you this. Nebuchadnezzar in his dream was the head of gold, and the kingdom was a gift to him from God. Daniel chapter number 2 verse 37 says, when Daniel interpreted it, he said, "You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand, and has caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold." So, in Daniel's interpretation, goes on to talk about the kingdoms of silver and bronze. Coming down to the chest and the arms, he says, "And after you there will rise another kingdom inferior to you." That's the one of the Medo-Persians that is there with the arms. "And then a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth." And of course, that third kingdom of bronze is Alexander the Great, who conquered the Medo-Persians and created the Greek Empire in 333 BC, and it lasted until 63 BC. Daniel then interprets in Nebuchadnezzar's dream the kingdom of iron when he says, "Then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters all things. So like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces." Daniel then gives the interpretation of the divided kingdom. Chapter 2, verse 41, he says, "And in that you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with the common clay." Theodosius became the emperor, and he divided the empire 395 AD. And that is the act that actually saved and became the two different legs. And we can read even more about that, and I've got that in your notes if you want to read that, and how the division happened and how these 10 toes were formed. In fact, in Daniel's interpretation, Daniel tells us about these 10 toes. Daniel 2, verse number 42 starts and says, "And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with the common clay, they will combine with one another." All 10 of these toes are going to combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. Oh, they're going to come back together one day into this revived Roman Empire, but they're not going to like it. They're not going to all agree. Here we must focus on the blasphemous names. It is a direct reference to the heart of the 7 leaders and their governments, which will be in total rebellion against the Lord. They will hate Him and everything He stands for. Daniel says the following about the leaders of this beast when he says this: "Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will speak monstrous things against the God of gods, and he will prosper until the indignation is finished. For that which is decreed will be done." There we have our intro. There we have it to this beast. His look, His feet, and His mouth, John tells us about. He says, "And this beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power," Satan gave him the power, "and his throne and his great authority." We see the face, the feet, the mouth of this beast. Now, for those identification marks, we need to return back to Daniel chapter number 7. What a great place, because we've already heard about this before. In Daniel chapter 7, starting with verse number 2, Daniel said, "I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea." That's the Mediterranean Sea. "And 4 great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked. And it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind was given to it." By the way, that was Nebuchadnezzar, just so you'll know. "And behold, another beast, a second one, resembling a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. And after this I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard." By the way, the one right there in between that we just talked about with the bear and the much meat and the 3 ribs, that was Cyrus the Great. And it says, "And behold, I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it." Now that's Alexander the Great, and the 4 wings are his generals. "And after this I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong. And it had large iron teeth, and it devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns." Now when Daniel wrote this passage, none of this had occurred, even the part about Nebuchadnezzar. It was still in Daniel's future. And the lion with the eagle's wings symbolizes the Babylonian Empire. The bear with the 3 ribs in its mouth symbolized the Medo-Persian Empire. The leopard with its 4 wings, like a bird, the 4 heads symbolized the Greek Empire. That's Alexander the Great and his 4 great generals who will ultimately divide the kingdom into 4 parts. And so we end up with these 4 parts of Alexander the Great's empire when they are split to the 4 generals who took over Alexander the Great's empire. There's the king of the west, which is Rome, the king of the north, which is Syria, the king of the east, which is Babylon, and the king of the south, which is Egypt. They're all under Greek rule. These 4 parts became known during this time, and all of them are ruled by Alexander's generals. And if you remember, in the Roman Empire of the West, Julius Caesar married Cleopatra of Egypt in the south, and that merged those 2 into one, and then Syria and Babylon did not have the strength to overthrow them, and the Roman Empire took it all over. Then Daniel saw this 4th beast come out of the sea, if you remember. He said it was dreadful and terrifying, extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. This beast was different from all the other 3. I've always said that several times. And yet they're all in the lineage of this beast. They were the forerunners of this last beast who's still to come, dreadful as he will be, and identified with his 10 horns. And these countries will make up the corpse of his empire's body. Now in John's description, the heads of this beast look like they were the head of a leopard. The leopard's Alexander the Great. And Alexander made his move, and he did it really quickly, and he had this whole empire under his control in just 12 years. And the beast would be like Alexander the Great. That means it's going to move fast, and he would move quickly. This beast that's coming is going to move quickly. In fact, it's going to move within 7 years. And this beast's feast looked like like those of a bear. And a bear is a different animal from a leopard, like Alexander the Great. It's a different animal. And he's not going to be swift, no, but rather a bear ponders its moves and then attacks with brute force to crush its victims. So the leopard moves fast, the bear moves slow and with brute force. And so too the feet of this beast John has in his revelation will seek to crush Israel quickly with physical might. Its mouth will be like a lion. The lion rushes to make the kill and then lies around for days, leisurely taking his time until it is hungry again for food, and then it'll make a kill again as needed. Finally, the revelation of this revived Roman Empire, represented by this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, can do nothing in the world had it not been for the great red dragon. The great red dragon gave this empire the power to do, and it was controlled by Satan. And he will throw all his temporal power that he has into this beast, so this beast can be successful. John now he's looking at this beast, and he sees a wound. In chapter 13, verse 3, he says, and I saw one of his 7 heads, I put the word 7 in there, as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. One of the 7 leopards' head of this beast, John sees, has a fatal wound. It has died, but it has been healed. It was no longer a dead head. The 7 heads represented the 7 empires that Satan had controlled. And as we have mentioned, in order they were the Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Grecian, Roman, and revived Roman Empire. Only one of them died, folks. Only one. All the rest were absorbed into living into a new empire. And the one that died was the Roman Empire. It died. It died in 1453 AD at the hands of the Muslim attackers. But in John's record, the head was healed. Symbolically, the Roman head will be healed, and its offspring will be the revived Roman Empire with its 10 horns. By the way, when I use these words on these lines, these words just tell me where I'm going. They're just little words to tell me what's coming next. That's the reason I put these words in an outline, so I can look at the outline and I know exactly what's coming next. And we're going to talk now about the amazement at this beast when John says, "And the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast." Why are the people of the whole earth amazed at the formation of this beast? Now, if you remember, we've already discussed this, I believe, twice before. The word earth means land. It means land. What land, we ask? Well, if you also remember, the people of the land surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, which came together to form this beast, were amazed, and this is the land. Now, John does not use the word world, although he has the word world and he can use it. Had John used the word world, he would have been talking about the entire world, but he's not talking about the entire world. He is talking about the land, and the land is that plot of land around the Mediterranean Sea that is the land that is controlled by Satan. 64 times he's talking about this. If he had used the word world, he would have meant every square inch of the planet, and that's not what he meant. The word earth means a specific plot of land in the Scripture, and therefore this reference to the plot of land directly involved in forming the new revived Roman Empire is what he's talking about. This understanding will guide us in determining future passages when John uses the word earth and when he uses the word world, and we're going to see them in the same sentence in a few verses down the road. John says this whole land followed after the beast. Why? As of today in 2024, it would be an absolute miracle for these 10 countries to agree to unite as an empire. Britain, Spain, France, Italy, and Greece might join together based on their heritage as Christian nations. But Egypt, Syria, Turkey, Macedonia, and North Africa might join together because of their history as Islamic nations. But for the two to come together at this time is highly unlikely here in 2024. It's unlikely. However, Islam is making a great influence in all those 5 Christian nations. And when these 10 nations are all Islamic, they will be ready to come together, and the people of those lands will be ardent followers of the government formed in that union of those 10 nations, and on top of that, they will have faith in that Islamic religion. It's worship. John now tells us about his worship. And he says, and they worshiped the dragon, that's Satan, and he gave his authority to the beast, that's the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him? Now this is very interesting. The people of this new revived Roman Empire will worship Satan, and he will empower the leaders of the new government with its power to virtually control everything around it. John heard their words when they said, who is like the beast, and who is able to wage war with him? In other words, what nation of the world has ever been as great as this new, united, revived empire nation? And because it is such a strong and such a powerful nation, no other nation can ever win a battle against it. That's what they're saying. That is not the truth, though. We come now to its words. Its words. And John says, with these words, he says, there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for, get this, 42 months was given to him. This beast, this new 10-nation revived Roman Empire government will proclaim blasphemous words for 42 months. And with this, we must draw the net once again to understand that these blasphemous and arrogant words have a specific meaning in God's mind, which may not be the same to everyday humans today. Frankly, from an American point of view, blasphemous and arrogant words can mean anything from how you talk to employers, employees, teachers, friends, acquaintances, and family members. None of that matters to God. John tells us what matters to God next when he says, and he talks about the blasphemies, and he says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Simply put, from this verse, it matters to God what a person says about God. Well, my soul, it mattered with the first great commandment, where he says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. This new revived Roman Empire will hate God and everything he expects. This nation will put its faith and trust in Satan instead of God. This blasphemy, that is idolatry. That is a sin in God's mind. It's the first commandment not to break. That is what is important to God. This beast of an empire would detest even the thought of the everlasting, eternal God. The people will worship Satan, the dragon, and his beast. John then talking here about these evil people, the war with the saints. The war with the saints comes next when John says, and it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. Once this beast of the revived Roman Empire government is established, it will begin to make war with the saints. So I ask you the question, what saints? Saints in the Scripture refers to believers in God. We usually think it refers to the members of the church. That's the saints of God in the church today. But the church is no longer on earth at this point in time. It has been gone since the sixth seal. Well, what does it mean? He's going to make war with the saints. Everybody. You see, I've got a picture of the globe there, and I've got a box with Satan's domain. He is going to make war with everyone who is of every tribe and nation and tongue that was given to him. Inside that little box there, Satan's authority, if you're Jewish or if you're just a Gentile and you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, he's going to make war with you and you are going to die. Who are the saints? In the trumpet 6, or the sixth trumpet, we saw the salvation of the nation of Israel. I showed it to you. It's in the prophecy that's still to come. It hasn't happened in the time of the story right now. It was part of this prophecy that this history is going to lay on top of when we get on down the road just a little bit. They believe in the true God. Therefore, the converted Israelites will be the new saints on the earth. Israelites will be saints, will be the saints. However, even though we know about salvation of this nation of Israel, their conversion, as I said a minute ago, has not happened yet. But by the end of the first 3.5 years, 1,260 of the tribulation, they will be saved. When those two witnesses rise to their feet, Israel is going to be saved. And in this trumpet, we are getting to know all the participants involved in that start of that great tribulation, which is going to lead to the great day of the Lord in the valley of Megiddo. 42 months after the witnesses stand and rise up into the air. 42 months, which this beast is going to have authority to torment Israel for those 42 months. This beast will give blasphemous names and speak blasphemous words against God, and that will not be anything new. However, in other end time scripture, this beast will hide its thoughts about Israel while it's sneaking in to make Israel her friend, its friend. And we'll cover the rest of that in the storyline later. Not to get too far ahead in this storyline, though, which I do quite regularly, we are going to discover that a certain religion will be controlling this beast. And it will not be the religion of faith that believes in the living God. The faith that rang through the doors of the church while it was still on earth of Jesus Christ. Jews, when they turn their belief to Jesus, will be Christians because they will believe in Christ. But this new empire will believe in Satan and put its faith and trust in Satan. But also notice that John says, and authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. This new beastly empire will be the most powerful nation in the world when it rises to power. It will not directly control all the world's nation, but it will have great indirect power over all the nations. Today in our world, the United States indirectly controls the world. It does not directly control any of the other countries except for its own 50 states and its associated unincorporated territories. However, the shift of the influence of the world power will have occurred by the time of the 7 years before the return of the Lord. It does not mean that life in the United States will be much different. All that must happen for the U.S. to lose its power as the leading nation of the world will be for its dollar to lose its place as the standard for all dollars in the world that all currencies are measured against. It's frightening to think that it is that simple, that if just the dollar is no longer the power currency of the world. But with the United States rapidly increasing its debt, it's out of control almost in its pace. The new revived Roman Empire would not control the world, but it would greatly affect the commerce in the world and have more power than the United States. The followers. We come to the followers. And John says this, and all who dwell on the earth, you see the word earth here, John says, will worship him. Earth means the land. Everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world, that means the whole world, not just the land, but the whole world, not just the land that Satan controls, in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. The Lord makes an extremely important distinction in this verse. Everyone whose name has not been found written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb would fall in line with this beastly government and look to it with awe and amazement and for all practical purposes worship. Now we must not forget that the 7 seals in the book have been broken. The names written in that book were no longer secret. They are open to viewing in heaven. Satan might have looked at the document before he was cast out of heaven at the beginning of the 7th trumpet. But we are not told anything about that in the Bible. Yet, those whose names are not in the book of life were literally drool over this beastly government. The warning. John says, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. We must not forget the following. Even though the church has been removed from the world, the Bible will still be here. By this time in the story, the nation of Israel would be the new saints of the world. And they would surely pick up the written Word of God in the Old Testament and the New Testament and devour the message found in the pages of the New Testament. And no doubt they will get to the part of the Revelation and realize it is speaking directly to them. It is a warning to them. It is also a warning to all those whose names are written in the book of life, even those who have not trusted the Lord yet, but will. Perhaps this would be the warning that changes their minds. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. In other words, if you have not ever thought about God before, you surely need to think about God now.